Hi, Miguel.
Hi, Kimi.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Mhm.
Um, I think I'll start with an introduction. Could you please introduce yourself for us?
Yes, hi, my name is Miguel Uyaguari. As you can figure out, my name, I am not from originally from Canada. I come from Ecuador, South America. I was born and raised over there, and I came to North America in 2005 to pursue graduate studies, and then over time, I I moved from a marine biologist into a molecular biologist. So it's been a quite of a journey. I am currently here at the University of Manitoba, where I have my research group, and I in the personal life, and I live here with my wife and my three kids. So for me to be here to have this job is like my pursuit of happiness moment, and I'm kind of living that kind of dream job, because for a person like me to be in this position is huge. I usually talk to other colleagues who are also immigrants, and what they tell me is that for us, or in general, right, or for BIPOCs in general, to get this type of position, if I could use an analogy, is like getting the Nobel Prize, right? Not necessarily, but
Oh, yeah.
but it's huge, and that's why we appreciate those achievements, right? So
I'm
uh
sure the faculty is very honored and very happy to have you here.
thank you.
And you touched a bit on your journey in science, but I want to know, when did your passion in science started, and how did your education and training went on to bring you here at the university?
Yeah, so I grew up in a rural area in Ecuador. It's a city, or it's a town actually. It's a town called Naranjal, means orange town. I was raised there with my siblings, and I think something that for me was very key, is to have a happy childhood. That probably helped me to be resilient, and also to at the same time to try to go for it. If sometimes somebody will tell you, no, that's very difficult, or no, you cannot do that. I will be I'll try to be persistent, consistent, to try to achieve something. And and I didn't know even any English, and so I as I told you, I grew up in the countryside. Then my parents always, I still have an old picture of where whenever I have a chance to go to my parents' house in the countryside, and there is a small library. There is a lot of books about animals, about science, about natural sciences, not science per se, but natural sciences. And also my mom and my dad used to read a lot of the Reader Digest, and so that's how I started to be very very curious. Even at some point, I started to learn how to read. Probably around 6 or 7, and you may find this funny, but I started to see that many of the books, or the poems that I read, they says anonymous, anonymous, and I thought that Anonymous was a Greek poet,
Me too.
yeah. So
Me too.
in that way, I say, oh wow, Anonymous again. Oh, that's great. Anonymous is a prolific author in my mind,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then many time many a lot time later, I realized that what Anonymous meant, but
Yep.
that's how I have that innate curiosity in me. And talking again about my journey, my parents always incentivate or try to foster in me the need to study, right? And they always put that seed on me, to study, to go to the university. So that's how because I was always in contact with the nature, I said, okay, I'm going to study something related to that, biology, and specifically I started to study marine biology. So I graduated in 2000 with my Bachelor of Science in biology, and I work in the industry probably for since 2000 to 2004, late 2004. But I was working with shrimp and fish companies, private companies that had those type of they culture those type of animals, right? It's an industry, the aquaculture industry. But then at some point in my life, I thought, um, and that was a dead end job for me. So I did have a friend of mine who kind of told me, you know what, in order to be better, you will probably, and he's actually at UBC right now. His name is JJ Alaba, Juan Jose Alaba, and he told me, you should go to the Fulbright Commission or the Fulbright Foundation in Ecuador. So one that thought, okay, just probably I just forgot about the conversation that I had with him. But at some point in 2003, I said, you know what, I'm probably wasting my life here or I'm putting my lungs and my heart towards something that there is not a career or there is no something better than this. So then I started to go. He had already left the country. He's a research associate and adjunct professor right now in UBC. So I started to ask around in a larger city. Guayaquil is the largest city in Ecuador, where all the embassies, all the consulates, or at least the major consulates are located. The capital is Quito, but where the embassies are located. Anyway, I went to the consulate of the States, and I just, in that time, you could go, and ask. These days, after many things change, but I started to ask, hey, excuse me, is here the Fulton Commission, which I mispronounced? It's actually Fulbright Commission. And they said, no, there is no such a thing here. I said, okay, and then I kept, coming. The people tell me, no, it's there, it's there. And I went and asked them, and they said, it's the Fulbright Commission. So I see. And so they point me out where the Fulbright Commission was located. So I went there because it's associated to the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Consulate. And then I asked information about the scholarships to pursue graduate studies. So they told me, okay, this is the process. We can lend you the CDs or at the time, there wasn't even CDs. We were using those stereo cassettes,
Yep.
And you will use the tape, and then you listen to the exams that they told me I needed to prepare. And at the time, I said, okay, I'm gonna save money. I was single at the time. I'm gonna save money. I say I'm gonna save money, and then I'm gonna probably, whenever is the next call for this type of scholarships, I'm gonna apply and see what happens.
Yeah, that's the best you can do.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And just to point out, the competition is very tough. As always.
Absolutely,
it's always.
Yeah.
And I do acknowledge you are always going to face or see people who are better than you. And that's completely fine. That's part of the journey, right? And then what I did, I was early, probably 2004, I decided, okay, I'm going to take my vacation times. I hadn't taken vacations. and I took five weeks of my work just to study, just to study. And I just talked to my supervisor at the time. I told him, you know what, I want the graveyard shift, just to work during the nighttime.
Yeah.
So in the daytime, I could go, after studying the GRE and the TOEFL, and and then a few months later, I think in June or July 2004, I went and wrote the exams, and then in August they called me, and they said that I had been accepted for the interview. Even after that point, there was an interview that it was formed by people from the State Department and from I think it's the Education Bureau of the U.S. And then I went to the interview, and they asked me, why I wanted to go to the States, why as a candidate I was different than other people that had
That's a
probably,
tough question.
yeah, that maybe other or suitable candidates as me, right? So, and they say, you know what, there are people who are, not, they have a natural intelligence, right? There are people who have a math intelligence, there are people who are more verbal intelligence, they are more articulate, But I always, even right now, I always state that, you can have all those skills, but, you still need heart, and I said those words, even in Spanish, because my English wasn't that great. I was very good reading, but I wasn't that great talking. And then probably 5 or 4 weeks later, I didn't have a phone. They called my mom, and they said, and they called my mom and said, "Oh, we're trying to connect with Miguel Uyaguari." And say, "What is in the regards to?" And they told her that I had gotten the Fulbright scholarship to go and study in the States. So, and that's where that was huge, because that opportunity changed completely my life, in the best way possible. So they told me that I was going to travel in early 2005. So early 2005, and they sent me to the University of California in Santa Cruz, which also play a significant role in my education, because for me, I was always thinking, in Spanish, and translated that into my mind in English.
Which is
But
normal, very
uh,
normal for English as a second language.
yeah, and sometimes they will ask me, how are you doing, or how are you doing? I say, what I'm doing, I'm here buying stuff.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
translation
So
just happens automatically.
yeah, yeah, and then I went to I was in the English as a second language school at the University of California in Santa Cruz, Banana Slugs. And then they prepare me, they prepare me to go, in different ways, that's why, sometimes I do see, people, who go to the schools, or even people who go to, sometimes at the time I didn't drive, actually. I have learned how to drive as well. But, sometimes I see, when I see a BIPOC, I can relate to those people, and I married in 2005, before I traveled there. And sometimes I see a person, in the bus stops, and it reminds me of myself, because I was like that, and at some point, even, I didn't have a car, and I only had a bicycle, and my wife was right beside me, and we used to place grocery bags on both sides of the handlebar, and so we used to be pulling like that,
I've done that, yeah.
Yeah. So to carry all the groceries, right? And but anyway, so after I was before, a few months before I left California, they told me that I had been accepted at the University of South Carolina to pursue my graduate studies, specifically a master's degree in aquatic toxicology.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went there, I did have a good environment at the University of South Carolina. That's very, very important. I have seen, you know, I have seen, these days you will see very toxic environments, where you cannot work, or your life will become miserable if you have a bad supervisor, or even if you have a very tough competition with your peers or your lab mates, right?
Absolutely.
So a key component was, that it was a good environment in the environmental Department of Environmental Health Sciences, Arnold School of Public Health, the University of South Carolina. They welcomed me. So the transition was very smooth, in that sense. I say, okay, this department is good. They from what I had previous experience that I have seen back home, right, back in Ecuador, and that's how it was my journey in aquatic toxicology. Because when I arrived there, I told my master's advisor, you know what, I would like to do something related to aquaculture. And he told me, you know what, I don't do aquaculture because the aquaculture industry is more over there, is more fishing rather than having ponds or nets,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
raise the fish, right?
Yeah,
Or they will capture the shrimp instead of culturing them in ponds.
absolutely. Yeah.
So then he was always, and he is, he's still kicking. And actually, I'm more connected with his family rather than him, because he doesn't use too much social network, but his family does. So I'm more connected to his family.
That's nice.
Yeah. So then Jeff Scott told me, you know what, we can do this project. That's the name of my master's advisor. But then before I finished my degree, in 2007, my master's degree in ecotoxicology, I approached him, what, Dr. Scott, I have been working with you. I think I'm a very consistent person, and I would like to explore with you, the possibility of doing a PhD here at the university, because that was my dream, right? And even at the time, there were people who told me, Miguel, and it wasn't my advisor though, just to point out, he told me, another person, a faculty member told me, for some people, the master's is enough, I remember that they told me, you have a strong accent, and your English is not that great. So I think with a master you will be fine, but that's why it makes me, think about, there are obstacles in life, but that person wasn't my primary advisor, so why I will care, right? So that
Sure.
idea continued in my mind, and my advisor, Dr. Jeff Scott, told me, yeah, I can hook you up, with a molecular biologist, because he told me at the time, I have shown you everything that I knew, you have learned with me. There is nothing else. But if you want to survive in this current world, you need to know or to learn new approaches. So he put me in contact with my doctoral advisor, at the time, my future doctoral advisor, Dr. Sean Norman. And my master advisor told me, I'm happy to be part of your co-advisor, but those tools, those molecular biology tools, I cannot teach you.
That's an
But
amazing mentor.
yes. So he told me, I can connect you with that person, because those are the tools that you will use probably for the rest of your life, or for in your career. And so that's how I started to learn about molecular biology. So you can see the transition from marine biology, aquaculture, aquatic ecotoxicology, and then molecular biology. And then I started to work in 2007, August 2007, in the Norman lab. I still keep contact with both, right? With Dr. Sean Norman as well as with Dr. Jeff Scott via emails. You can disagree with anybody in your house, even you can argue with your wife or your partner, whoever, right? But it's an advice, that I have always stuck in my mind, always try to form a good relationship with your advisors, right? Because those are the people who mentor you, and I
Absolutely.
have seen, I saw other labs or even other uh, Fulbrighters who did have a bad experience with their advisors and ended up moving, from those labs because they had toxic environments. So that's how, I always try, to have a good environment, and that I think that is essential, essential for the student, essential for the advisor, and also for the overall lab environment. Because, if you have a toxic environment, that also can alter your mental health, and
Absolutely.
that,
Absolutely. And it's so important as a graduate student.
yeah. So, and then I stay in the Norman lab for 4 years. I learn new techniques, new approaches, and the way that I see it, or the way that I still see it. And I told my students, and, one day in the lab is one day less towards your degree, because that's the way that I learned, in the lab, and sometimes you will see, oh no, I will do that next week. Oh, I will do that next week. Why, or why waiting until Monday, right? If you can have something, I'm not saying that this work is everything, right? But
Yeah, for sure.
you also need to have your own space. When is for the personal time, when is work time. Let me see. Then before I finish my degree, a friend of mine, he currently is an environmental officer in Yellowknife in the Northwestern Territories.
Hmm.
Told me, I mean, he's also an immigrant like me, and he told me, our countries are changing. Our countries have become, violent. In the case of my country, there is a lot of narco wars. So, and we talk about those type of situations, right? How to raise a family. I was already married with 2 kids at the time in 2008. And he told me, you know what, we should apply probably to Canada as a federal skilled worker people,
Yeah.
federal skilled worker program.
Yeah.
So at the time, everything was in hard copy. If you made a mistake in one form, that was it. They will send the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so much
Nowadays,
easier now that it's electronic.
yeah, that's why I learned that. Well, that's what I heard. Now people ask me, how you migrated over there, and I said, you know what, I did it all at school. I kept communication with them back and forth, and 2 years later, in 2010, a few months before I finished my degree in the States, they approved my PR.
That's
So
amazing. That's
yeah,
like just getting your PR is one of the best days. I never forget that.
huh?
It's usually a very, very emotional and also, I don't know, for me, felt really proud of all the hard work.
Yeah. So yeah, so it takes time. It takes time, it takes energy, and sometimes, I mean, and you were wondering why this is happening to me. Why I have to return this? I mean, I have to, especially the background check, because some documents expire every 3 or 4 months, and they require, you
Yeah,
know,
new ones.
the new ones, and that's a pain in the neck because I don't have too many relatives back home these days, only my brother. So I got my PR. I applied to, before I finished my degree, I applied to a postdoctoral position at the University of British Columbia in a project funded by Genome Canada that it was called the Applied of the Watershed Microbiome. And then I finished my degree in July. In August, I was in Canada. I was back in
Mm.
Canada, working for UBC as a postdoctoral fellow, late August. I should point that out. I lived there, I for almost 8 years. I learned more approaches, more tools. I also learned, to become a mentor, even though that all the mentors, all the mentorees, all the students, are in theory your advisors or your mentors, advisors or your advisors' students. Still, as a postdoc, I have direct contact with them. I do learn a lot of things, and my advisors at the time were Dr. Patrick Tan from UBC, who currently is in Sidra, Dr. Natalie Pristajecki, and Dr. Judy Isaac Renton. So I learned from the three of them. I wish I could know how to be always cool like Patrick. He never lost his coolness. No matter what, it could be an earthquake or a fire in the building, and he would never lose the coolness. Or something bad could happen, and he will always,
That's a skill. That's a harder skill.
That's a skill because I'm human. Sometimes you have emotions, right? But he always was like that, always like that.
Oh,
right. But anyway, so since 2015, I say, what, I cannot be 2014 actually, and I started to apply to different positions, but they said, oh, not enough publications, not trainees so far. And then I just keep publishing, right? So starting to build a strong portfolio. So I applied, if I remember correctly, to 38 different universities in 2014. I still have the folders and the letters of rejections,
I believe you, yeah.
And always, we thank you for your time, thank you for your effort, but we found that we found other suitable candidates for the position, so you haven't been shortlisted. But then, always, I'm tenacity is a word that can define me, persistency or consistency, I still didn't have a car. I still didn't drive back then, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. And then a position was posted in Nature Jobs from the University of Manitoba, where they require a water microbiologist to conduct work, and also to be an indigenous person. Many people think that only indigenous people live here in North America, or even some people have so narrow-minded that they only think that they are only Native American is the only native people that lives in the States, and that's it. That's it.
Unfortunately, yes.
And even I always argue, about sometimes I get asked, which part of Mexico are you from? I get asked that question, and I said, what? Below south of Mexico, there are other countries that they have their own culture, right? I'm part of a specific group of people who live in a strip in Ecuador that is the countryside, and it's called the Montubio people. The Montubio people are mestizo people. Mestizo people are people who are have indigenous blood, as well as blood from or DNA from Spanish, because most of the countries in Latin America were conquered by Spain, right?